It's been a while since I've made a Harry Potter Life Of video, the thing that made this channel take off. And it's crazy that I've never made a video on Lucius Malfoy, who I've always found to be very interesting. In this video, I'm going to go over his arc, focusing on things like his obsession with power, his manipulation, and later in his story, his fear. Now for this video, we will be going over a story from the books and not the films. But as always, I'll use clips from the movies to make the video more visually pleasing for you guys. So just keep in mind, the story that the films told will not be covered in this video. On top of the information from the books, I've also gathered all of the information I could on Lucius that was released after the series ended, which I think adds a ton to his story. If you enjoy this video, hit that like button. It will greatly help the channel with the algorithm, meaning I can make more fun videos like this. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my socials, all of which are linked down below. Now that I've said that, let's break down the life of Lucius Malfoy. Lucius Malfoy was born in 1953 to his mother Mrs. Malfoy and his father Abraxas Malfoy, and like his father, he had a pale pointed face, cold gray eyes, and blonde hair. Before we dive into Lucius's arc though, I want to highlight his family and how they came to be. The Malfoy family went back 10 centuries as one of Lucius's ancestors named Armand Malfoy arrived in Britain with William the Conqueror as part of the invading Norman army. After helping William, now dubbed King William I, he gifted Armand a huge plot of land in Wiltshire, and this is where Malfoy Manor was built and is where Lucius and every other Malfoy between him and Armand lived and grew up. Going off Armand's relationship with the Muggle King, funnily enough, Lucius's family got their riches by not just fraternizing with wizard kind, but also Muggle kind, not only making business deals with them, but also marrying them. It wasn't until the Statute of Secrecy was put into place that they stopped interacting with them, and after the Statute of Secrecy, they denied the fact that they had any dealings with Muggles, actually going in the complete opposite direction, saying that they hated them, which eventually led to the pureblood beliefs we came to associate with the Malfoy family today. However, this means that the Malfoy family isn't actually pureblood, as a few Malfoys married and had children with Muggles. Since the Statute of Secrecy though, the Malfoy family has married and conceived with nothing but other purebloods. This also means that those pureblood families they paired up with though are not 100% pure either, which is crazy when you think about it, because there are a lot less pureblood families than we thought. In Lucius's days, he was raised to believe that pure blood, riches, and status were everything. You could also say that his father Abraxas raised him to basically be the Wizarding World's version of racist toward Muggleborns as well as blood traders. When Lucius turned 11, he headed off to Hogwarts, and like the rest of his family, he was sorted into Slytherin almost as soon as the sorting hat hit his head. Pretty soon into his schooling, he met Narcissa Black, a member of the pureblood Black family, and they headed off right away. When Lucius was 15, he had to deal with rumors about his father Abraxas, who supposedly had something to do with Nobby Leach, the first Muggle-born Minister of Magic, stepping down from his post, many believing that Abraxas threatened him if he didn't do so. While at Hogwarts, Lucius learned what it meant to uphold the family name, as he became a model student that led by example and became a voice of authority among his peers. He had mastered the art of keeping up appearances, so much so that he was made a prefect in his 5th year. Lucius was also invited to Horace Slughorn's Slug Club, which only the best and brightest students were allowed to be a part of, though it didn't hurt that his family had a notable history that certainly intrigued Slughorn. Lucius also kept being close with Narcissa Black, and the two eventually started dating, both having the same views about blood purity. During Lucius's later years at Hogwarts, he welcomed Severus Snape by patting him on the back when he joined the Slytherin table, and from then on, the two had a mutual respect for one another. Meanwhile, Lucius also formed an opinion on his Transfiguration professor, Albus Dumbledore, and his respect for him was quite the opposite he had for Snape, greatly disliking his professor. While in school, Lucius constantly heard about an increase of dark magic in the real world, and it got worse and worse as time went on, eventually culminating to the discovery of a dark wizard named Lord Voldemort. While most others disagreed with and feared this dark wizard, Lucius found himself agreeing with most of Voldemort's views. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Lucius's dislike for Dumbledore increased when he became headmaster, which Lucius believed was the worst thing to ever happen to the school, and Albus's opposition against Voldemort only made his hatred of the man even more pronounced. Lucius eventually graduated from Hogwarts, and still dating Narcissa, the two left being the it couple that everyone loved together. Shortly after finishing school, Lucius's father Abraxas died prematurely of dragonpox, meaning that Lucius inherited all of his family's money, Malfoy Manor, and the Malfoy's house elf Dobby, who Lucius treated very poorly. He quickly filled the home with exotic trees, plants, and animals, including a few peacocks that were free to roam the property. Though he didn't officially work, Lucius made it his full-time job to carry out what his family had been doing for centuries, building connections. He frequented the Ministry of Magic in London, and he curried favor with many high-ranking officials, either bribing or blackmailing them, but mostly bribing, and he became a very well-connected man. He could delay laws he didn't want passed, ask for favors, and was set up to have multiple ministry workers back him up if another ministry employee didn't agree with what he wanted. Now having the house, the fortune, and entering adulthood, he asked his longtime girlfriend Narcissa to marry him, and the two tied the knot shortly after that. Though Narcissa did not become a Death Eater herself, she supported Lucius as he made the decision to join up with Lord Voldemort, whom Lucius had long since revered. When Lucius and a few of his friends from Hogwarts became Death Eaters and got the Dark Mark tattooed on their arms, the conflict came to an all-time high, leading to what was known as the First Wizarding War. While Voldemort made his army, Dumbledore made his own with the Order of the Phoenix, making Lucius despise his former teacher/headmaster even more. By the end of the war though, the Order was not much of a threat, as the Death Eaters just picked them off one by one. Meanwhile, Lucius moved up in the ranks of the Death Eaters as Voldemort realized he was an ambitious man seeking some shared glory. He used his status at the Ministry to get his master the information he needed, and sometimes if necessary, he wasn't afraid to torture or even murder to get that information for Voldemort. This proved to Voldemort that he was a very valuable servant, and Lucius eventually cemented himself as Voldemort's second in command. Many successful battles were fought under Lucius's command, and he helped the Death Eaters win many battles against the Ministry Orders and even the Order of the Phoenix, doing all of this while wearing a mask and making the Ministry think they could still trust him.
That is my true mask.
With Lucius by his side, Voldemort did something he rarely ever did. He counted on another human being, asking Lucius to keep a diary of his safe. When Lucius asked what it was, all that Voldemort said was that if it was taken to Hogwarts, it would reopen the Chamber of Secrets, which last time that happened, it killed a Muggle-born student. Victory in the First Wizarding War seemed inevitable for Voldemort and his Death Eaters, and with that, Lucius believed he would bring his family power and prestige they had never seen before. However, everything went wrong when Voldemort went to finish off an infant boy named Harry Potter. His killing curse rebounded, and Voldemort was nowhere to be found afterwards. Lucius watched as everyone celebrated his master being defeated, and he was left to make a choice of what to do next. After Voldemort's fall, Lucius was outed, and he immediately pleaded that he had been under the influence of the Imperius Curse, one of the 3 unforgivable curses that allow someone to make you do their bidding. He said he had never meant to do anything he had done, and it was all Voldemort controlling his actions. Many other Death Eaters claimed the same thing, but none of them had the influence that the Malfoy family name gives you, because after Lucius called in a few favors from high-placed ministry officials, he got away scot-free. After all of this, Lucius continued not to work, just enjoying his riches and his family, which now included his son Draco. Draco had been born just a few months before Voldemort's downfall, and Lucius and Narcissa spent all their time raising, spoiling, and loving their son. The movie sort of made it seem as though Lucius was a bully to Draco, but this was not actually the case in the books. He treated his son very well, and the only time he got cross was when Draco went against their pureblood family beliefs, or if he did something that would tarnish the family name. He adored his son more than anything, and gave him everything he could have ever wanted. While he wasn't a bully to Draco though, Draco of course watched his father bully others while growing up, using his status and wealth to get whatever he wanted, and Draco, who idolized his father, followed in his footsteps. So Draco was not a bully because his father bullied him, but because he copied his dad's bullying ways, which I think is a common misconception. Lucius remained friends with some of the other Death Eaters that were cleared, like McNair, Crabbe, and Goyle, and Lucius even had Draco hang out with Crabbe and Goyle's sons, so they knew each other years before they went off to Hogwarts together. Lucius also kept in contact with another former Death Eater named Igor Karkaroff, and he happened to be the headmaster at Durmstrang Institute, and Lucius originally wanted to send Draco there because of this, and also because they covered more of the dark arts than Hogwarts does. However, Narcissa said no because she didn't want Draco being that far away, and Lucius gave his wife what she wanted. For the next decade after Voldemort's fall, Lucius took drastic measures to make sure that the Malfoy family name was still held in high regard, even after he was rumored to be a Death Eater. He instantly started donating loads of gold to different causes, like St. Mungo's Hospital, the Ministry of Magic, and even Hogwarts. And this worked in the eyes of many, mainly those who worked at the Ministry, but there were still those who didn't buy his story about being under the Imperius Curse. People like Arthur Weasley, who would go on to be Lucius's sworn enemy. On top of donating to Hogwarts, Lucius also became a governor for the school, volunteering his time to help run things at the castle. Lucius was very curious about Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the baby that had defeated his master. There were rumors that Potter was actually a dark wizard himself, as only dark magic could defeat such a threat like he who must not be named. Because of this, he told Draco about this boy who lived, and he advised his son to befriend the boy when he left for his first year of Hogwarts. After Lucius and Narcissa saw Draco off at platform 9 3/4, Draco did as his dad said and reached out a hand to Harry Potter, but it did not go as planned, as Harry completely rejected him. This turned out not to matter, however, as it became clear to Lucius that there was nothing special about the boy, nor was there any powerful dark magic in him. The following summer, Lucius was driven crazy by his son's constant talk of Harry Potter, always complaining that he got special treatment from Dumbledore and the other staff, and most of all, that Potter was allowed to have a Nimbus 2000 racing broom even though first years weren't supposed to have their own brooms. With all of this bashing his son was doing on Potter, Lucius advised his son not to appear less than fond of Harry because most witches and wizards regarded him as a hero who made the Dark Lord disappear. Before Draco left for his second year at Hogwarts, Lucius took him to Diagon Alley to get his school supplies, but before making their way to Main Street, they headed down Knockturn Alley, going to the shop Borgin and Burke's. Lucius was there to sell a bunch of dark items he had laying around his manor, as his rival Arthur Weasley was heading a raid looking through people's houses for exactly what Lucius was trying to get rid of. Lucius knew he had to keep a certain reputation, and couldn't risk being seen with dark items after so narrowly escaping punishment for being a Death Eater. He spoke with Borgin, the shop owner, and when Borgin tried to sell something to Draco that's used for thievery, Lucius said he hoped his son would amount to more than a thief, but then mentioned Draco's bad grades, saying, "Though if his grades don't pick up, that may indeed be all he is fit for." Draco replied to his father saying that the teachers had favorites, and they all favored Hermione Granger. Lucius immediately snapped back though, saying that he should be ashamed that a mudblood beat him in every exam. After leaving the shop in Knockturn Alley, Lucius had sold all of the dark items he brought with him, all except for one, the diary that his former master had entrusted him with all those years ago. Again, all that Lucius knew about it was that the object could reopen the Chamber of Secrets if it arrived at Hogwarts. Lucius loved this idea, but he just had to find a way to get it to the school without using his son, as that would draw suspicion to his already questioned family. Lucius let Draco wander a bit by himself, and not long after that, Lucius walked in on his son bullying Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and two of the Weasley kids, Ron and Ginny, and this gave him the idea to pin Voldemort's diary on the family he hated most. As he was walking over, Lucius's rival Arthur told his son off for jumping at Draco, and Lucius addressed Arthur with as much snark as he could give. He then proceeded to take a shot at how poor the Weasley family was, and as he did, he picked one of Ginny's books up. Before he could put the book back, along with the diary, which was his plan dependent on the Weasleys, the two fathers had a back and forth about their blood purity beliefs, and this got incredibly intense, eventually leading to a fist fight. Arthur threw himself at Lucius, which Lucius did not expect, and he was slammed against the bookshelf. He got a good punch in, making Arthur's lip bleed, but he walked away from the fight with a bruised back and a black eye from a book that fell on his face. Hagrid broke the fight up, and Lucius put Ginny's book back in her cauldron along with the diary, and he walked away with his son. While in Diagon Alley, Lucius and Draco also went to Quality Quidditch Supplies, and Lucius, wanting to ensure that Draco would make the Slytherin Quidditch team, bought the Nimbus 2001, the newest, fastest, and most expensive broom for Draco and everyone else on the team. On September the 1st, Lucius and Narcissa took Draco to King's Cross, sending him off to his second year at Hogwarts. A few weeks later, he received a note from Draco telling him that he had made the team, which pleased Lucius a great deal. Lucius got some other great news around this time, as Arthur Weasley was fined 50 galleons for bewitching a Muggle car, which his son Ron and Harry Potter flew to Hogwarts rather than taking the train. Lucius took this opportunity to be quoted in the Daily Prophet, who reported on this, making sure to bash Arthur, his family, and try to put a stop to an act Mr. Weasley had been working on for months, saying, "Weasley has brought the ministry into disrepute. He is clearly unfit to draw up our laws, and his ridiculous Muggle Protection Act should be scrapped immediately." Lucius felt unstoppable with everything going his way, especially when he got wind that the Chamber of Secrets had been opened once again, meaning his plan had worked. While Muggleborns were being petrified left and right, Lucius decided to push his luck even more, using this as an opportunity to abuse his power as a school governor and end Albus Dumbledore's tenure as headmaster of the school. This was not as easy as he thought, however, as the other governors did not agree with this decision. This led Malfoy to blackmailing the other governors until they agreed, and he got all 12 signatures that he needed to remove Dumbledore from the school. He was so ecstatic that he hand-delivered the order of suspension directly to Albus himself so he could see the look on his face. When Lucius arrived, he was met by not only Dumbledore, but Hagrid and the Minister of Magic himself, Cornelius Fudge. Fudge initially tried to stop him, but Lucius flexed his power over the minister, saying, "The appointment or suspension of the headmaster is a matter for the governors, Fudge," which I'm sure he relished in, having power over even the minister himself. Malfoy felt on top of the world at this point, everything going in his favor. However, this came crashing down when he found out that Dumbledore was back as headmaster. He went to the school accompanied by Dobby, slammed Dumbledore's office door open, and tried to accuse Dumbledore of going against the governor's orders. However, Dumbledore told him that the other 11 governors contacted him, telling him to come back after Ginny Weasley was taken down to the chamber itself. Dumbledore also mentioned that they told strange stories of Lucius threatening to curse their families if they didn't agree to suspend him in the first place, but luckily for Lucius, Dumbledore did not act on these accusations. Dumbledore then informed Malfoy that the person opening the Chamber of Secrets was Lord Voldemort himself, and as he said this, he held up the diary that Voldemort had entrusted Lucius with, now destroyed. Dumbledore then forced Lucius to sit there as he praised the Weasleys for being one of the most prominent pureblood families, which I'm sure enraged Mr. Malfoy. Behind his back, his house elf Dobby was miming to Harry, pointing at the diary, and then to Lucius himself, informing Harry that he was the one who planted it. This made it click for Harry, and he accused Lucius of this very thing, to which Malfoy responded saying, "Prove it." Dumbledore then chimed in, saying that they could not prove it, but warned Lucius not to give out any more of Voldemort's old school things, especially because Arthur Weasley could use his power to make sure that it was traced back to him, which I'm sure once again infuriated Lucius, being told that he was outranked by his greatest enemy. As Malfoy was leaving, Harry tricked him into giving Dobby clothes as he threw a dirty sock aside right into Dobby's hands, freeing the elf from the Malfoy family. When he advanced on Harry, he was thrown back by his former slave, once again being outmatched by someone he felt was so below him, and taking yet another hit at his pride. In his rage, Lucius slipped up, telling Harry that he would die the same way as his parents.
Your parents were meddlesome fools too.
All but proving that he was a Death Eater who wasn't under the Imperius Curse, as the meddling that they did was their work for the Order of the Phoenix while fighting the Death Eaters, including Lucius himself. Things went downhill even more, as Lucius was sacked as the school governor, which could only happen if all 11 of the other governors signed off on this. He had now lost the biggest source of his power, now only having his money to feed that craving. The following school year, though Lucius was no longer a governor, he was still heavily involved in school matters after his son Draco had been hit by a hippogriff during a Care of Magical Creatures class. He filed an official complaint to the ministry, which the ministry decided to uphold, mainly because he had many of these officials in his pocket. Lucius had realized that he could not go after Dumbledore because that did not go well the last time he tried, but he realized he could hurt both Dumbledore and also Hagrid by demanding the hippogriff's execution. When it came time for the hearing, Lucius stood up, said his part, and the committee did exactly what he told them to do. There was an appeal, but between some threats and being friends with the executioner Walden McNair, another former Death Eater who got away scot-free, Lucius won the case and Buckbeak was to be executed. You can imagine his fury, however, when he found out that the hippogriff had escaped, and both he and his son were outraged that they had been outwitted by a gamekeeper who they thought got Buckbeak out. Though he lost this round, Lucius continued to use his money to gain more power and more influence, and after donating loads of gold to St. Mungo's Hospital, Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge invited him and his family as his personal guests to sit in his box for the Quidditch World Cup. Fudge fed into Malfoy's ego by bowing to his family while being introduced to Draco and Narcissa. After the minister turned around, things got tense as Lucius came face to face with Arthur Weasley, who was also in the box, and who he hadn't seen since their physical fight in Diagon Alley. Lucius made fun of Arthur by asking what he had to sell to get these tickets, saying that his small house wasn't even worth the price tag. When Lucius caught a glimpse of Hermione Granger in the box, a Muggle-born, his lip curled, but Hermione stared very bravely back without faltering. This might have been the spark, mixed with a bit of alcohol, that led to Lucius rounding up a group of former Death Eaters that also got away, and together they dressed in hoods and masks and rampaged the campgrounds. At one point, they made the Muggle landowner and his family go into the air, and even turned the mother upside down to show her underwear, which Lucius and his friends just laughed at. Their fun was ended quickly though, as the Dark Mark was cast in the sky, the sign of Lord Voldemort himself, and fearing that this was cast by the Dark Lord, they all ran as fast as they could. It of course wasn't him, but rather Barty Crouch Jr. But Barty Jr. was in fact helping the Dark Lord make his return. Lucius saw this coming, as his dark mark tattoo on his arm was getting darker and darker over the next year, until one day Voldemort called Lucius and all of his other Death Eaters to him using said tattoo. Lucius returned to his master's side for the first time in 14 years, and Voldemort praised him for not renouncing the old ways, but also keeping a respectable face to the rest of the world. However, he then reprimanded Lucius for not trying to find him, and even more, for running from his dark mark at the Quidditch World Cup. Voldemort forgave him for this though, in return for more faithful service in the future, which Lucius immediately agreed to. Lucius then begged his master to tell how he achieved the miracle of returning after all of these years, and Voldemort told his followers about his downfall, his isolation, and his plan to make his return with the help of Barty Crouch Jr. and Wormtail. Lucius watched as Voldemort went to kill Harry in that graveyard, but some weird stuff started happening because of Priori Incantatem. But even so, Voldemort refused to let any of his Death Eaters help, and this resulted in Harry escaping. This put a lot of pressure on Lucius's shoulders, because Harry was not meant to leave that graveyard and tell of Voldemort's return, nor of the Death Eaters that were there, which is exactly what Harry did. Lucius went into overdrive, donating money, using connections, and getting in Fudge's good graces, leading to the minister saying that Harry was a liar and that Voldemort had not really returned. This honestly worked out even better than Lucius could have ever imagined, as the ministry went as far as to take Harry to trial for casting a Patronus charm in front of a Muggle, not just a small normal trial, but a full criminal trial. Lucius's work doing this got him back in Voldemort's good graces, which he needed desperately. Voldemort was not happy with Malfoy for being so careless with the diary he had entrusted him with. Lucius didn't tell his master what he had done with it at first, but the Dark Lord forced it out of him, and when he discovered it had been mutilated and stripped of its powers, his anger with Lucius was terrible to behold. This was the first time that Lucius had truly failed his master, but Voldemort was forgiving of this because he knew how useful Malfoy would be moving forward. On the day of Harry's hearing, Lucius went to the ministry to talk to Fudge, buttering him up, offering to donate more gold, and telling Fudge he should try his best to sentence Harry. Unfortunately for both Fudge and Lucius though, Harry was not sentenced. After the trial, Fudge informed Lucius of the results, and during their conversation, Harry himself, accompanied by Lucius's greatest enemy Arthur Weasley, showed up. Malfoy immediately made fun of Harry, calling him Patronus Potter, and he noted that Harry was very snake-like, the way he always got out of trouble. Harry then looked Lucius in the eyes and said that he was good at escaping, only the two of them knowing that he was referring to that night in the graveyard when Voldemort returned. Lucius ignored this by instead turning to Arthur, and he made fun of his rival for working down in the second floor and said, "Don't you do something that involves sneaking Muggle artifacts home and bewitching them?" Of course referring to the flying car. Harry asked why Lucius was there anyway, and Lucius scolded Harry, saying that his dealings with the minister were none of his business, and Fudge proceeded to lead Malfoy to his private office. There, the two of them made a deal that ended with Lucius donating piles of gold in return for having more influence with Fudge. Lucius had other reasons of being at the ministry that day though. Lucius had instructions from his master to put Sturgis Podmore, a member of the newly reformed Order of the Phoenix, under the Imperius Curse, the very curse that Lucius claimed to have been under when pleading innocence after the First Wizarding War. Lucius successfully carried out this task, and then returned home to Malfoy Manor awaiting instructions from Voldemort. A few weeks later, Lucius was instructed to use the Imperius Curse to have Podmore go into the Department of Mysteries and steal the prophecy that had to do with Voldemort and Harry Potter. Podmore made it to the lower levels of the department, but he was caught before he got to the prophecy, and he was sentenced to 6 months in Azkaban for the break-in. The very next day, Lucius saw Draco off to platform 9 3/4, and while on the platform, he noticed a black dog with Harry and the Weasleys. He had of course been informed at this point that Sirius Black was able to take this form courtesy of Wormtail's information. Seeing this, Lucius told his master, and Voldemort instructed Malfoy to inform the ministry that Sirius Black was in London. Lucius did exactly that, which got him even more praise and appreciation from Fudge and the rest of the ministry. While all of this was going on at the ministry, Hogwarts was changing as well, which Lucius enjoyed quite a bit. He gave his 2 cents about Umbridge becoming the High Inquisitor, and he of course could not pass up a moment to be quoted slandering Dumbledore in the paper again, saying, "I feel much better in my mind now that I know that Dumbledore is being subjected to fair and objective evaluation." Many of us with our children's best interests at heart have been concerned about some of Dumbledore's eccentric decisions in the last few years, and will be glad to know that the Ministry is keeping an eye on the situation. Around the holidays, Voldemort sent Lucius to the Ministry again, where he was of course welcomed very warmly by Fudge and the other Ministry employees, and this time he put Broderick Bode under the Imperius Curse to steal the prophecy. They thought this would work better as Bode was an unspeakable, meaning he worked in the Department of Mysteries. However, being an unspeakable meant that he was a very powerful wizard determined to keep the secrets of his department a secret, so he fought very hard against the Imperius Curse, but ultimately Lucius succeeded. However, they once again failed as they did not know that the prophecy could only be retrieved by those about whom they are made, meaning that when Bode touched it, security triggers went off, the result of which affected Bode's mind, meaning he had to go to St. Mungo's hospital for treatment. After these failed attempts at getting the prophecy, they learned from their mistakes and Voldemort put a new plan into action. He put a false memory in Harry's head that made him rush to the Department of Mysteries where Voldemort had instructed Lucius and a team of Death Eaters to be. Once Harry picked the prophecy up, Lucius revealed himself and told Harry to hand it over. Lucius made fun of Harry as he told Bellatrix about his weakness for heroics. Things got tense though, as he had to stop Bellatrix multiple times from going after Harry and his friends, of course fearing that the prophecy would smash. Harry started asking about the prophecy, and Lucius initially said to stop playing games, but when he realized that Harry really didn't know about it, he jeered at the fact that Dumbledore hadn't told him. Lucius then began to entice Harry, asking if he wanted to know why Voldemort tried to kill him as a baby and how he got his scar. But Lucius got a little too invested in this, and he was thrown off guard when Harry and his friends attacked. The kids scattered, leading to Lucius, the leader of the Death Eaters, telling them to split up. Lucius became a bit frantic, knowing that they could not fail. They had to get that prophecy tonight. He was so frazzled that he even commanded the other Death Eaters to leave the Death Eater knot, saying that the Dark Lord wouldn't care about his injuries, only that the prophecy was retrieved. They eventually found all the kids in a room, but the Death Eaters left the others to chase a running Harry who had the prophecy above his head, meaning they could not fire any spells, fearing that the prophecy would be smashed if they did so. This led them to the Death Chamber, and they had Harry cornered. Neville showed up to aid Harry, but he was taken down and tortured by Bellatrix. Lucius and Bellatrix then used Neville as a bargaining chip, and just as Harry was about to hand the prophecy over, members of the Order of the Phoenix arrived. Tonks hit Lucius with a stunning spell right away, allowing Harry to break free with the prophecy. A huge battle commenced, and though it took a while, Malfoy recovered and immediately went after Harry again, demanding the prophecy. Harry threw it to Neville, and when Lucius was about to shoot a spell at him, Harry nailed Malfoy with a jinx, sending him flying back again. He once again got up and took aim, but before he could fire the spell, Remus Lupin got in the middle of them to shield Harry and Neville. In the chaos, Neville's robes ripped, making the prophecy fall out of his pocket, and before either of them could grab it, Neville, who was under the influence of the dancing feet spell, kicked the orb with his dancing foot, and the prophecy smashed. Obviously, the movie had Lucius drop it when punched by Sirius, but remember, we're going by the books, not the films, and this battle was very different in the books. Things grew even worse for the Death Eaters as Albus Dumbledore arrived, and he took every Death Eater except Bellatrix down, including Lucius. They had lost. Malfoy had failed his master, the prophecy was smashed, and his evil ways both in the First and Second Wizarding War were finally exposed to Fudge, the Ministry, and the entire Wizarding World. Lucius was shipped off to Azkaban for as many crimes as the Death Eater, and the Malfoy name that had been pristine for so many centuries was now tarnished thanks to him. Even Horace Slughorn refused to bring Draco into the Slug Club, despite the fact that he had invited Lucius himself along with his father Abraxas. The Ministry raided all of Malfoy Manor, taking away anything that could possibly be dangerous or that could have dark magic. In reality though, the Ministry and the public was the least of Lucius's concerns, and honestly, he was safer in Azkaban than he was in the outside world. Voldemort placed the blame of this failed mission on him as he had been the leader of this operation. Between that, the carelessness with which Malfoy had taken with Voldemort's diary, and the fact that Lucius was pretty useless now that he was outed to the Ministry, he was in serious danger from Voldemort. He definitely did not want to leave Azkaban anytime soon, but while he was safe in prison, his wife and son were not, and Voldemort punished Lucius by giving Draco the impossible mission of killing Albus Dumbledore. Miraculously, he almost succeeded, and the mission was carried out by Snape when Draco was too scared to complete it. Not long after that, Azkaban was liberated by Voldemort, and Lucius was set free after being imprisoned for a year. He was sent into something much worse than prison in the outside world though, as Voldemort took over his home at Malfoy Manor and made it his and the Death Eaters' headquarters. One day they had a meeting in the dining room, and Voldemort humiliated Lucius in his own home. He demanded that Malfoy hand over his wand, saying he no longer had a need for it. All of Malfoy's usual confidence was gone. His voice was hoarse, his appearance was messy, having sunken and shadowed eyes, yellowish waxy skin, and it was as though he was a different man. When Voldemort approached him and asked for his wand, he looked to his wife Narcissa for help, but she just stared forward. Under the table though, she grabbed his wrist, and at her touch, Lucius withdrew his wand and handed it over to the Dark Lord. Things were made worse when Lucius began to reach for Voldemort's wand, thinking they were trading, but Voldemort sneered at this, and the other Death Eaters laughed, humiliating him even more, again in his own home. Voldemort then mentioned that the Malfoy family did not seem too happy having him in their home, and he asked what about his presence displeased them. Lucius quickly said nothing, but Voldemort called him out on his lie. He then forced all three of the Malfoys, Draco included, to nod their head that his return to power was everything they had ever wanted. The atmosphere of invasion and fear went on for quite some time, and Lucius's sister-in-law Bellatrix had taken his place as Voldemort's second in command, and she resided in the manor to keep an eye on Lucius. One day, Snatchers arrived at the manor with who they claimed to be Harry Potter himself, along with his friends Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, but Harry's face was swelled up, so they weren't entirely sure if it was him. Lucius and Narcissa saw this as an opportunity to get back into Voldemort's good graces. They brought Draco in to see if it really was Harry, but he couldn't be sure. Now, during this moment in the movie, Lucius grabbed Draco by the back of the neck and scolded him. But in the book, he did not do this. He just stood next to Draco and talked to him encouragingly, granted with a lot of excitement. When Lucius realized that Draco was not capable though, he took it into his own hands, looking very closely at Harry's face, and he thought he saw a scar. Bellatrix then entered, and she immediately went to call Voldemort using her dark mark. But before she could, Lucius's hand enclosed on her wrist, and he said that he was going to be the one to call their master, as it was in his house, so it was under his authority. Bellatrix laughed in his face though, saying that he lost any of his authority when he had his wand taken from him. Bellatrix got distracted and stopped putting up a fight though, so Lucius began to pull his sleeve up to call Voldemort, but Bellatrix shrieked to Wade, saying that they would all die if the Dark Lord came right now. She had noticed that the Sword of Gryffindor was there, which she knew was supposed to be in her vault at Gringotts, making her fear that the golden cup Voldemort had entrusted her with, just as he had entrusted Lucius with the diary, was taken as well. They locked everyone up except for Hermione, who eventually said that the sword was a fake, and Lucius then suggested that they get the goblin they had in prison to tell them if it was real or not. The goblin Griphook lied and said it was a fake, meaning that Lucius, Narcissa, Draco, and Bellatrix thought that they were safe, and this time Bellatrix really did call Voldemort to them using her dark mark. Moments later though, Harry and Ron had gotten free and they attacked, Harry taking a shot at Lucius that took him out for the whole fight. While he was down, Lucius's mistreatment of his former house elf Dobby came back to bite him, as Dobby helped all of their prisoners, including Harry, escape the home he was once enslaved in. This was bad news for the three Malfoys as well as Bellatrix, because Voldemort was already on his way and they had nothing to give them but their failure. When he arrived, he punished the four of them very severely. It was so bad that Lucius had marks from this beating months after the punishment took place. Lucius had fallen out of favor with the Dark Lord even more than before, and this time, his family physically suffered because of it. A few weeks later, Lucius was present when Voldemort discovered that Harry had stolen the golden cup from the Lestrange's vault at Gringotts, which was of course one of his Horcruxes, and he exploded with rage. Lucius, along with Bellatrix, threw people behind them in the race to the door, and it was a good thing that they did, because everyone who remained in that room with Voldemort lay dead on the floor moments later. Voldemort then disapparated, leaving Lucius in a state of terror, narrowly escaping death. This was a wake-up call for him, and he realized that his wife and son were more important than anything else, even more than the cause and the person he had dedicated his life to when he became a Death Eater. He went through the motions, joining in on the Battle of Hogwarts, but his main concern was getting Draco out of there. Draco had not come to join Voldemort with the rest of the Slytherins, making the Dark Lord accuse him of joining Harry Potter. When he voiced this to Lucius during the battle, Lucius said that Draco would never do that, but Voldemort, not caring at all, said that if Draco died, it was his own fault for not coming. Malfoy then asked the Dark Lord if he was afraid that someone else might kill Harry before he could, and he suggested that Voldemort go in and seek the boy himself. Voldemort called him out though, saying that Lucius only wanted him to do that so that he could find out what happened to his son. He then ordered Lucius to go and fetch Snape, and Malfoy did as he was told. The Battle of Hogwarts eventually came to a halt when Voldemort called his forces back to the Forbidden Forest and left a message telling Harry to come and find him and end the fight. Lucius and Narcissa were among the group in the Forbidden Forest, both looking defeated and terrified, unsure about what happened to their son during the fight. The two of them watched Harry be killed right in front of them, and Lucius was fearful when Voldemort beckoned his wife forward to check to see if Harry really was dead. He watched her lean down, then stand back up and say,
"Dead."
Lucius traveled with Voldemort, the Death Eaters, and Rubeus Hagrid as he carried what Lucius thought was Harry's dead body, making their way back to the castle. His wife, of course, never got a chance to tell him that she had lied about Harry being dead. Going by the books instead of the movies as I have for this whole video, the battle did not restart when Harry revealed himself, but rather when Neville stepped up and killed Voldemort's snake Nagini, which was in a very different order in the movie. When the battle started back up, Lucius and his wife did not even attempt to fight, instead screaming for their son Draco, whom they had not found yet, both fearing the worst. In the movie, they of course found out he was okay as he joined their side, but that did not happen in the book. In the novel, they were not reunited with Draco until some time into the battle restarting, and the family had a moment, no longer caring about the outcome of the fight. Harry eventually revealed himself when he took off his invisibility cloak, and he defeated Voldemort once and for all in front of Lucius and his family. The Malfoys were not entirely sure what to do after this, so they just sat in the Great Hall with all of the good guys, unsure if they belonged there, but no one was paying them any attention. This awkward moment certainly beat the alternative, because all of the other Death Eaters were being arrested and sent off to Azkaban. All three of the Malfoys were cleared, mainly because Lucius and Draco had abandoned Voldemort and his cause in the end, but most of all because Narcissa lied to Voldemort about Harry being dead. With the freedom he was granted, Lucius paid this back by providing evidence against his former allies and even helped track down some of the Death Eaters that got away after the battle. This was not enough to restore the Malfoy name and the pristine reputation the family had held for centuries though, and this time the Malfoys could not hide behind their puppets. They were out in the open and exposed. When Draco graduated from Hogwarts, he started dating and eventually married a girl named Astoria Greengrass, and though she was from a pureblood family, her views on blood purity shifted after the war, which greatly disappointed Lucius and his wife. They did not approve of the marriage because of this, and they found Astoria to be a rather disappointing daughter-in-law. She did give them something special though, a grandson named Scorpius Malfoy to continue the family name in line, who Lucius and Narcissa loved very much. Lucius continued with his interest in dark artifacts even after his redemption. And if you count the Cursed Child as canon, which most fans don't, but JK does because she got a bag of money for saying so, he collected a time turner and even created a second one, despite the fact that every time turner was meant to be destroyed at the end of the Order of the Phoenix to avoid plot holes, which was a wise decision because the Cursed Child bringing them back added nothing but plot holes. In official Harry Potter canon, we don't know anything about Lucius's death, but I did see a lot of confusion online because a fan fiction story said he died in 2020, which many people thought was real and was part of official Harry Potter canon, but after thoroughly researching, this is not the case. Lucius was very good at playing both sides, keeping up appearances, and picking the right people to influence to get what he wanted. However, this eventually caught up with him, and it hurt not only him, but his wife, son, and the legacy of his noble family for all of history. In the end though, he once again got away without any punishment despite the many crimes he had committed. It makes that line he said to Harry about Harry being snake-like because he always wriggles his way out of trouble very thought-provoking, because this line actually fits with his own story arc more than anyone else's, even referencing the logo of the house he was so proud to be a part of. Though he lost many things after the Battle of Hogwarts, Lucius was able to keep much more than he deserved, including his freedom. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can follow me on Instagram to see more of my personal life, like my cute dog Loki, and some behind the scenes movie flame stuff. I also do similar content on TikTok and Twitter that I do here on this channel, so if you like what I do here, check them out. All the handles are right below me, and links are in the description. Over here are my wonderful patrons. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a few other perks, become a patron today. As always, if you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe, and look out for more great Movie Flame videos on the way.